What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and in the fantasy football world, you're known for your hits and misses. So 3 days away from the NFL draft, I am going to talk through my guys for this 2025 Dynasty rookie draft class. We're going to go round by round in rookie draft ADP and pick out 1 to 3 players that I am planting my flag on in this 2025 class. So we're going to have the studs in the first round all the way through to the sleeper dart throw area. Just a list of 10 or so names that we look back and say, I planted my flag and put my reputation on these rookies in 2025. With all that being said, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And the first player we'll talk about is Travis Hunter. Now, the ADP we use for this video is from Dynasty League Football, DLF. They run rookie mock drafts every single month. Travis Hunter in the month of April, landed as the 9th overall player in Dynasty Superflex rookie mock drafts. Now, of course, he keeps on climbing. I actually talked about him on the BDG Dynasty channel, so I'm not going to run super long with these premier guys, right? We're talking about a player who is my 102 and wide receiver 1 in Dynasty rookie drafts, but we continue to get steam that he is going to play a lot more offense than we previously had thought. This was on Pardon My Take on the Monday episode. Daniel Jeremiah comes on and says, Travis Hunter, he's going to Cleveland. He's going to major in offense and minor in defense. And if you asked him, he would say he's a wide receiver first, then a corner, not the other way around. And that is absolutely massive, because the issue with Hunter is how much of offense is he going to play. And the more information we get and the closer we get to the NFL draft, the more it seems like he's going to play a lot on offense. And if that's the case, we're talking about a really special player. Shout out to Matt Harmon over at Reception Perception. His comp for Travis Hunter is prime Odell Beckham Jr., and the charting backs that up. 92nd percentile against man, 96th percentile or 97th percentile versus zone, 97th percentile versus press. That is monster numbers. And you have to remember as well, he's getting like signaled to on the sideline a lot of these routes. He's not a full-time, in the meeting rooms kind of player, and he's still that special on the field. He's going to get drafted 2nd overall. And then we look at the number side of things. His efficiency score really popped. So that is your career yards per out run, your career PFF grade, and your career passer rating when targeted, which is just when you get targeted the ball, are touchdowns happening, are yards happening, are good things happening when you're getting targeted. He leads the entire class in efficiency score, over a 25% missed tackles forced per reception, and then over a 60% contested catch rate. So this is somebody, according to Reception Perception, is getting open. Then at the catch point, he is making 50-50 balls, 60-40 balls, and then after the catch, his missed tackles force is amazing, and then on top of that, he's super efficient. So for a guy that's like not even his complete final format receiver and playing both ways, I want to be betting on this player. That's why he's my 102. I think he's that special. I think he's a generational talent. And even if he plays a little bit on defense, it seems like offense will be where he spends most of his time. And we could see heading into year 2, if it comes out that he's going to play full-time wide receiver heading into year 2, all of a sudden you're talking about a 1-2 turn startup pick. I think that he is that good. Now, moving on to our next player, we have 3 first-round rookie draft picks we're going to talk about here. Our second one is Quinshon Judkins. Now, I will say the DLF drafters actually have him pretty fairly ranked. He is at the, ranked 6th spot, RB4, 6.8 in rookie draft ADP. I have him as my 105 and my RB3. But I will say, if Trevion Henderson goes first round, I'd probably have Judkins 106, RB4. That's how close I have these top-end running backs. But I've been seeing, and maybe it's a loud minority kind of thing, but I've been seeing a lot of tweets like this one from Datarama. Career yards per carry for Judkins, 27th of 32 running back prospects. Yards after contact per attempt, not great. Yards per out run, not great. Missed tackles forced per attempt, not great. And I get it, the efficiency isn't great, but I would just say this side of things is a little bit overrated when it comes to scouting and projecting running backs at the next level. I actually looked through my entire database in the PFF era and found the correlation between every running back metric I could find so that you guys could see this, right? So correlation just between the metric and a running back's points per game in their first 3 seasons. You have all at the top, the RS grading system. That is my model RS grade. Then you have draft pick. Then you have Land Z score up in like the 0.6 plus. Then in 0.5 plus, you get to age adjusted production. 0.365, you get to age adjusted receiving. And then about half of what like draft pick and Lance Z score and everything. You get to missed tackles forced per touch, elusiveness rating, SRS, which is actually strength of schedule. So like Judkins going to an Ohio State is just as important as him having a high missed tackles forced per touch, you missed tackles forced per attempt, and you get down below the 0.3 threshold, which is then draft age, which Judkins is 21 years old. So it's more important that he's young than it is him having a high 10 plus yard rate, yards after contact per attempt, receiving points per game, and then you get down to like speed score, breakaway run rate. So you can just sort of see with the way that this chart is set up that those things matter, but first and foremost, it's draft capital, it's what a prospect model might say, it's what a film grade with Lance Z might say, it's what his production says. So I just want to make sure we're not losing sight of that, and I think a good way to sort of contextualize this is to put it in a chart, right, where we can see the 0.7 correlation is kind of in its own tier, then you have the 0.6 and above, right, these are what these red lines are, 0.5 and above, and then kind of a tier of like 0.3 correlation. Then you have 0.2-ish correlation, and then speed score and breakaway rate down there at the bottom. And this is with Quinshon Judkins. So it's what his value is, right? He's an 8.73 in the RS grades. That's in the 93.8th percentile. And the RS grades have a 77 or a 0.773 correlation to points per game and production, which is more than double something like missed tackles forced per touch. Now, of course, if you want to check out the prospect model, check it out on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. All of these rankings as well, like before I list each player, you will hear where I have them ranked. If you want the rankings, if you want access to all my prospect models, you can go back and see since 2007 for running back, quarterback, tight end, since 2017 for the wide receivers, my dynasty rankings, everything. That'll be on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find that in the description and the comment section down below. But with Judkins, for the high end, he is in the 93.8th percentile. Then draft pick and Lance Z score, the next most important metrics, he's in the 87th percentile, 82nd percentile. Age-adjusted production, which is just a metric I have that takes into account your adjusted yards per team play, just like how much of the offense are you taking up with a little bit of a boost for receiving upside, and then adjusting it per age, right? So like the younger you do it, the more of a boost you get. He is 0.27. That's in the 85th percentile. So in terms of production, in terms of film scores with draft pick and Lance Z, and then in terms of my prospect model, he's across the board a really strong running back prospect. But then you get to the 0.3 correlation. This is just a jumble of stuff that's not super predictive, but can help in a model. And even then, among all running backs, 33rd percentile in receiving, still 63rd percentile missed tackles forced per touch, which isn't that bad. And it is worth noting that missed tackles forced per touch is actually more predictive than missed tackles forced per attempt. Elusiveness rating, 53rd percentile, so not like awful. And then something that's just as meaningful as everything else here is school strength, which was Ohio State, 97th percentile. Missed tackles forced per attempt, 70th percentile. That's actually pretty good. Draft age, the next one, 96th percentile. And then the stuff that he doesn't score well in, right, like under 35%, you're talking stuff that's 0.279 correlation, 0.275. So these things are concerns, but to me, they're slight concerns, and anybody not named Ashton Genty or Bijan Robinson is going to have some red below the 0.5 and above stuff, right? When we look at, for comparison, you can see Trevion Henderson here, right? Where Trevion Henderson, the 0.5 and above correlation, 80th percentile plus. But then you get down to age-adjusted receiving under 50 percentile. Missed tackles forced per touch under 40th percentile. Get down to draft age. He's 22 years old. So he also has a few that are in the red or below the 40 percentile mark. And on top of that, you can start to poke holes in him as well, where it's like he's a smaller, more explosive back. Why is his receiving numbers not so great for a running back that's not 220 plus pounds like a Judkins? His missed tackles forced per touch, why isn't that higher for a smaller back that's better in space? All of these guys have questions, right? Where Genty has no questions. Judkins and Henderson, you can poke holes in. To me, they're in the same tier. I have just seen the take that they're not, and that Henderson's clearly ahead, and Judkins is just like awful because of how he scores in some efficiency metrics. But I think that at the end of the day, he is a very strong prospect in his own right. He had 1,500 plus rushing yards in the SEC as a true freshman next to Zach Evans, an NFL player. And he just looks strong throughout. He's going to get drafted highly. And at the end of the day, right, when we look here one last time, he is in the 80 plus percentile in projected draft cap, Lance Z score, the RS grades, age-adjusted production, where he plays. Like, he still has a lot of really good to his profile that I think you can sort of overlook some of the stuff like a yards after contact per attempt. And even then, he still has some of those efficiency metrics where, missed tackles forced, he actually does okay in for especially a bigger back. To me, he projects as like early career Joe Mixon with like his true upside of like prime Ezekiel Elliott. That's his like ceiling. I think that's a good ceiling to chase in the middle of the first round of a rookie draft. Now, our last first round pick in your rookie drafts that I am stamping my name on, Emeka Egbuka, just a super clean wide receiver prospect. I think in the past I would have overthought and been like, nah, he's a early declare, whatever. Well, that's why I built out the new wide receiver prospect model, and he comes out as a low-end elite wide receiver prospect. He is my 108 as my wide receiver 3. You can see here on DLF, he comes in around the 111 or like the 110-ish. He's someone that I want to be drafting a lot of. You can see among elite wide receivers, he's on the lower end, but still like across the board in terms of all the things that go into the model, right? Film score, breakout score, athleticism. He is at worst a B+, right? A- in film score, A in breakout score, A+ in height-adjusted athleticism. Just across the board, really solid. And something that sticks out for Egbuka that I think people really overlook is his year 2. His year 2, true sophomore, he is next to Marvin Harrison Jr. on an 11-2 Ohio State team that is really good. And next to Marvin Harrison Jr., who had 77 catches for 1,263 yards and 14 touchdowns. Emeka Egbuka did well as well, right? 74 for 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns. Something to really look at with him as well is he gets kind of typecasted as like a boring slot. He had 11 carries for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns and actually got the carries over a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. as like the fun, I wouldn't call it Luther Burden, but he definitely is better as a runner and just like a guy in space than people give him credit for. And as much as we love Luther Burden's year 2, I adjust each year of receiving yards per team pass attempt in the model for teammate score and your team quality, right? So Emeka Egbuka gets boosts here for Ohio State being 11-2 and then also being next to Marvin Harrison Jr. and even next to a guy like Julian Fleming, who is a monster recruit. And that actually boosts his year 2 to having a better receiving yards per team pass attempt than Luther Burden and Tet McMillan. So he has the early on production. He has the pedigree. He tested well on top of this where he looks like Chris Godwin, one of these explosive slot receivers. He tests with a 9.7 RAS, 4.4 speed, 38-inch vertical, 6 foot, 202 pounds. He's in this Chris Godwin, Amon-Ra St. Brown type of mold, and I don't want to get bored with a really high floor prospect. So he's somebody I love, and I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is when it comes to Emeka Egbuka, to Quinshon Judkins, when it comes to Travis Hunter. These are my highest drafted guys over on Underdog Fantasy. I will say, like, the big board's going to fill soon. They're doing like a small big board. They have some drafts going on right now before the NFL draft. Make sure you check them out. Use promo code RON when you sign up. They will match your first deposit up to $1,000. I have links to that in the description and the comment section down below. Now, let's get to the second round here. And first up, this is a really polarizing player. Jalen Milroe. He is going off the board in DLF as the QB4, as the 19th ranked player is the 207. He's my 203 and my QB3. And before we even get into if Jalen Milroe is a good player, we have to remember the game that we are playing. We are playing fantasy football. We are playing the market in Dynasty. And first and foremost, you look at the top 12 quarterbacks in points per game scoring last year with minimum 10 games played. 8 of the top 12 had 20 or more yards per game rushing on the ground. 20 or more rushing yards on the ground per game were top 13 numbers at the quarterback position. So as simply as I can put it is rushing equals fantasy production almost always. And when it comes down to Jalen Milroe, before we even talk about his arm, he is a prolific rusher. Last season, 726 yards on the ground and then 20 rushing touchdowns in the SEC. Over his entire 38-game career, he has 41.5 rushing yards per game and 33 rushing touchdowns. That's almost a rushing touchdown in every single one of his games. That, of course, is going to be huge for fantasy football. And we talk about rushing fantasy points per snap among quarterbacks drafted in the first or second round. In my database, it's Lamar, it's Trey Lance, then it's Milroe. Then it's Jalen Hurts, it's A-Rich, it's Kyler, Jaden Daniels, Marcus Mariota, Justin Fields. Now, say whatever you want about Trey Lance busting, about Anthony Richardson not looking so good right now, about Marcus Mariota and Justin Fields not looking so good right now. There were opportunities for every single one of these players after their first or second year where they were a 1-2 turn pick in startups. Trey Lance, after his first year, he played like 3 games, 1-2 turn pick. A-Rich, concussion, shoulder injury, 1-2 turn pick last year. Same with Justin Fields, same with all of these guys. And then on the other end, you have the upside of a Jalen Hurts, a Lamar Jackson, a Jaden Daniels. 3 guys going like the top 8 of startups right now. So when we talk about the upside of Jalen Milroe, he has the upside that if he actually hits, you're all of a sudden talking about a top 6 quarterback in a startup. And if he doesn't hit, but he just flashes down the stretch, 4 games, he can all of a sudden be somebody that you're talking about as a top 3 or 4 startup pick in terms of, top 3 or 4 round startup pick, just based off of his fantasy point production and rushing ability before we even get to his throwing. Now, of course, he needs opportunity. As it stands right now, he is getting mocked. This is from Jordan Reed over on ESPN. He was mocked 33rd to the Cleveland Browns today, which he would get an opportunity somehow, some way at the end of the season, and then all of a sudden Milroe's coming in. He's going to score fantasy points, and you can, if you believe he's not a great player, you can then sell and make a huge profit on a second-round rookie pick, and that's kind of the angle I'm going with. But I will say, I don't hate the idea that he could actually be good. When we talk about gold or better quarterback prospects to go outside of the first round, he joins a list right now. He is in the gold tier with Jalen Hurts, Colin Kaepernick, and Russell Wilson. It's a small sample. He could 100% be awful. He could be the next Malik Willis, but he's going to get an opportunity to start. His underlying metrics like QBR aren't as bad as people think, and he could still develop. He is not a finished product at this point in time. Now, after him, let's talk about the 205 in my rankings as my RB6. I will say ADP has him about there, right? This is my 205 RB6. ADP has him 205 RB6 pretty much. But this is still somebody I want to plant my flag on. Even if I'm not way ahead of consensus, I want to make sure I am drafting him. So let's talk about Cam Skattebo. And something I really want to be cognizant of, I want to be aware of, is how good this running back class is. I know we keep saying it, but it's another thing to actually put it into perspective. I went back and looked at my databases, found kind of like, I made a score for like if you have a legendary, if you have an elite, a gold, a silver, which are my tiers in my prospect model. For each of those, you got a certain amount of points based on their hit rate, right? So like legendary 10, elite 8.5, gold 5, silver like 1.5. And I found across the board which were the best and worst classes in my databases. For running back, this is tied for the 3rd best out of 19 classes since 2007. That's really, really good. It's tied with the Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon draft class. The only 2 ahead of it are 2017, of course, with Kamara, McCaffrey, Fournette, etc. And then 2008. People sleep on 2008. They had like 5 first-round running backs. Darren McFadden, Ray Rice, Chris Johnson, Matt Forte, Justin Forsett. It was a really, really strong draft class from a prospecting perspective. Then at wide receiver, 6 out of 9. That's not great. Quarterback, 8th out of 19. That's like, about 50th percentile. Tight end, 9th out of 19, about 50th percentile. So when it comes to this class, running back is deep and it's very good. And when we're talking about the second round, we're talking about like, mid wide receivers or quarterbacks who aren't, like, now that Milroe's off the board, Dart's off the board, this is when you want to be targeting the running back. So I really wanted to give a shout to Cam Skattebo here. When we look at his production in this final year, it's pretty nuts. Jacob Gibbs has a great tweet here. He's a great follow over on Twitter. Career scrimmage yards per game, Skattebo is just 6 yards under Ashton Genty. Scrimmage yards per game in 2024, just about 15 to 20 yards under Genty. Career rushing success rate a little better than Genty. Career avoided tackle rate just below Genty. And Skattebo played 11 of 13 games for his Power 4 schools in 2024. He had 100-plus scrimmage yards in all 11 games, averaging 197. He averaged 185 yards and 2 touchdowns in 5 2024 games for his ranked opponents. His avoided tackle rate actually rose as he faced higher levels of competition. He avoided 59 tackles in those 5 games. He's a monster producer. He came in 5th for Heisman voting. He had like over 1,700 rushing yards. He had 45 catches, 605 yards, and 3 touchdowns at 219 pounds. So we're talking like monster tackle breaking, monster production, monster receiving upside, and then also a 3-down size of 219 pounds. He also killed the vertical and broad jump, so he's explosive as well, for as much as he's not fast in a straight line where he's running, somewhere in like the 4.65, 4.7-ish range, depending on where you find his pro day data. Now, I did want to touch on, right? We just talked about with Judkins why missed tackles forced might be a little bit overrated, but I think the way to use these kind of stats isn't for the high end, top 50 picks. Those guys are going to get drafted highly, and that's truly what matters at the end of the day. But when we get to a guy like Skattebo, where his RS grade is like 75th percentile, his draft pick is 81st percentile, land Z-score 65th percentile, age-adjusted production 61st percentile. When all of those become, like 60th to 70th percentiles, and it's like all of these guys just sort of have average draft capital and production, at that point, then we can get to the efficiency stuff that actually sets these guys apart. And that's what you're seeing with Skattebo here, where you get to the 0.3 or better correlation tier, and you're in the 97th percentile for age-adjusted receiving. You're in the 98th percentile for missed tackles forced per touch, 96th percentile for elusiveness rating, 97th percentile for missed tackles forced per attempt, and then, of course, his strength of school, just 64th percentile at Arizona State. But these metrics, the efficiency stuff, when we get to this part, this range of running backs, this is what I care about. And Skattebo just crushes all of those 0.3 plus correlation marks. And this is the guy that I want to bet on. It is a bummer that he's 23 years old, right? You go down to the 25th percentile. That's not great. 12th percentile speed score, not great as well. But when we get to this range, we're in the second round. As are the top 5 running backs. They're not going to be perfect across the board, but he has the efficiency, the pass catching upside, the size, and the final season production that I want to be betting on. And a similar production profile, or just not a similar production profile, but a similar efficiency profile, is actually going to be Bhayshul Tuten, who is going to be my last second round pick that we are planting a flag on. He goes to the 212 in this ADP as the RB9. He is my 209 as my RB8. So about 3 spots higher than consensus. And he fits with Skattebo here as one of 10 running backs with 35% or better missed tackles forced per touch. And he has greens across the board. It's a pretty decent list, right? It's Gibson, Genty, Benson, Javonte Williams, Cam Skattebo, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Brooks. Dwayne McBride is a rough one, and then Bucky Irving. So being in this range is really good. He has greens across the board, great 10-plus yard chunk rate, good yards to contact per attempt, receiving fantasy points per snap as well, 0.133. So he is a 3-down back. He's efficient. He's explosive. And the thing that puts him over the top is, unlike Skattebo, he is a monster athlete where he kind of looks like Devon Achane. He looks like Keaton Mitchell. He looks like Jaleel McLaughlin. And in fantasy football recently, these profiles have been hitting, and I want to bet on him here. He's 5'9", 206 pounds, so compact. And then also 24 bench reps, which is pretty funny from him. 4.32 speed, 40-inch vertical, 10-foot broad, coming out in the RAS comps next to Reggie Bush. So that's someone I want to bet on. He looks really good. And then we will go a tier further down to round 3 to Harold Fannin. He's going off the board on DLF as the 309-ish as the tight end 4. And he's my 212 as my tight end 3 in my most recent update. Now, I will say, in my top 24 rankings and in my just class previews, I haven't really mentioned Harold Fannin a ton because I've kind of cooled off on him, but recently I've come all the way back around, and I do want to let you guys know I've been in on Harold Fannin. Me and my co-manager in a Campus to Canton Devy League, we drafted Harold Fannin in the offseason, okay? We drafted him in the offseason, and then also I've been tweeting about him since October 3rd. Random thought, but Harold Fannin needs to be in top 3-round NFL pick discussions. That was after he had over 100 yards versus Penn State and over 100 yards versus Texas A&M. I then said he is one of 3 receivers with 1,000-plus yards as a tight end. It's nuts. Tyler Warren has 681. Brock Bowers' best season was 942. Now, again, it's Bowling Green, but the level of production that Fannin had was absolutely nuts. Now, what kind of is the disconnect between then and me kind of cooling off was the NFL Combine. I wanted him to test like Evan Ingram, where if you're going to be 6'3" at tight end, 240, 230, you got to be an elite athlete. That's what Evan Ingram did. 4.42 speed, 36-inch vertical, elite agility drills, and that was not in the cards for Fannin, where he ran a 4.71, 241 pounds, and at that point, it's tough, right? Where most of these guys who are, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, the best tight ends across the board, they're almost always physical freaks. But Harold Fannin, if you want to thread the needle, you can talk about Zach Ertz, you can talk about Jordan Reed, and those type of players, and I don't think it's really that crazy that Harold Fannin could be the outlier or the exception to the rule, because he is an outlier. Now, more on kind of like why I was getting scared off is he has the downside of Dalton Kincaid, which Max Toscano has been touching on all offseason, talking about Fannin, Brenningstool, guys like Dalton Kincaid. They can't play in line. The blocks they're asked to make can be absorbed by wide receivers. They're good pass catchers for tight ends, but don't give you the other end of that trade-off. Will be impossible for them to command every down roles, and that's the issue. We need a tight end to run like 75% or more of the routes to be fantasy relevant, and if they're coming off the field in heavy packages or running formations, they're not going to get there. All of a sudden, they become like a package player, and that's not good enough. They need to be good enough to block inline and good enough to either catch from inline or catch in the slot, but then not be, pigeonholed into just slot only. Because then at that point, you might as well just have a slot receiver instead of a 4.71 tight end. But the thing is that Harold Fannin, he could be special. Okay, this is somebody that you're not paying anything crazy. You're paying a third rounder in your rookie draft for somebody that maybe he is just that good, that he could be a slot receiver in the NFL, but he still carries a tight end designation, that you're getting wide receiver points in your tight end spot, and then potentially a tight end premium on top of that, where all of a sudden you're getting huge wins above replacement over somebody that's kind of breaking fantasy in a way, and you're not spending, a 103 on a Kyle Pitts. Instead, you're spending your third round rookie pick with that kind of upside. And this is somebody that, if I'm going to bet on an outlier, it's going to be Harold Fannin Jr., where he is only 20 years old. He won't turn 21 until July. And he has the best tight end season ever for a college player. 117 catches, 1,555 yards, and 10 touchdowns in just 13 games. And over his entire career, he had 33 rushes for 159 yards and 5 touchdowns. So he is good with the ball in his hands. I know it was the MAC. I know it was Bowling Green, but we saw earlier he was doing it versus Penn State. He was doing it versus Texas A&M. These are good defenses that know the ball is going to Harold Fannin, and he still made it work. And you look at the nation's leader in receiving yards. This is from Scott Barrett. He holds up against Odunze, Tank Dell, Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase in yards per out run. He is behind only Devontae Smith in yards per out run. He is behind only Devontae Smith in first downs per out run. He is only behind Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, and I guess Jareth Stearns in yak per reception. Missed tackles forced per reception, he leads the entire list. Yards per team pass attempt, he's behind only Devontae Smith. And then yardage market share, he is first on this list. So in terms of like the wide receiver stats of the efficiency score stuff of yards per out run, first downs per out run, even stuff like missed tackles forced per reception, he looks amazing. So for me, he's my current 212. And I just want to make sure that once the talent pool really dries up and we're talking about like day 3 running backs or round 3 receivers, I'd rather take the swing on somebody that I truly do believe has the upside to break fantasy. And then my second, third rounder that would be planting my flag on is Ollie Gordon. He's my 307 as my RB12. In this mock, he goes off the board as like the 3, actually really not that far off. I think that this is like the 309 or something in that range, right? 31, 24 plus 6. So it's 207 or 307 as the RB13. He's my 307 as my RB12. So really not that far off the market, but again, someone that I just want to plant my flag on, that however this thing shakes up after the draft, I want to be at or higher than consensus on. And with Ollie Gordon, it's very simple. His year 2 was amazing. Him and Ashton Jeanty up there in the 25-plus point per game area in terms of PPR scoring. Of course, he did that at Oklahoma State, but Ashton Jeanty did it at Boise State, another not-so-great school. And in terms of how he looks against Amarion Hampton and Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson, all of their year 2s, he looks absolutely amazing. Now, he fell from earth in year 3. It really was not good. Oklahoma State fell apart. But that year 2, I'm willing to chase in the third round of a rookie draft. He also had 39 catches for 330 yards and a touchdown to go along with his 1,700-plus rushing yards and 21 rushing touchdowns, which, by the way, he didn't even have 100-plus rushing yards until week 4 of his second season. And with that kind of receiving upside, we're talking about one of the rare players in my database that have over a .1 plus receiving fantasy points per snap. So just somebody on a down-to-down basis, how much of a receiving threat are they? And then also being 225 plus pounds. So you start to get into this area of Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, James Conner, Leonard Fournette a little bit, of these big backs that can catch, don't have to come off the field on third downs, and have a all-purpose three-down skill set. And if Ollie Gordon isn't going to win by being one of the best and most efficient running backs in the league, a la Jahmyr Gibbs, it's going to be being a volume sponge and getting 250-plus touches, which I do think, if he threads the needle, if he goes to the right spot, that's definitely in his range of outcomes. Now, let's get to my dart throws. These are guys outside of the top 3 rounds of DLF ADP. First up, we have Tory Horton. He's going in the late 4th as the wide receiver 15. He is my 310 as my wide receiver 12. I love Tory Horton so much that if I take out, or not only do I love Tory Horton, so does the model. If I take out draft capital, I give everybody 50 draft pick. That's your pick, 50. So it just sort of takes draft capital out of the equation. And, I'm giving you guys a sneak peek at what the model thinks about these players in a vacuum with no draft capital. It has it Hunter, Egbuka, Burden, Tet, Golden, and then Tory Horton at wide receiver 6. He has a B+ breakout score, A+ height-adjusted athleticism, C+ efficiency score, D program quality, no for early declare. So nothing that great, but his breakout score was really solid. He had 2 solid years at Nevada next to Romeo Doubs and Cole Turner. Then he goes to Colorado State, and he leads the Mountain West in receiving yards and has a really strong first 3 seasons. He tests well with a 4.4 140 at 6'2", 196 pounds for a 9.83 RAS. And the cherry on top is just today, Matt Harmon on reception perception dropped the Tory Horton profile. Now, there's some red on his success by route. He's not going to win on corner routes or on 9 routes, but in terms of slant, screen, like screen, you're not really winning, but in terms of like slant, out, dig, comeback, and a lot of these, in-breaking routes, he is winning a ton. He has the 71st percentile win rate versus man, 62nd percentile versus zone, 94th percentile versus press. That is all super, super exciting. He passes the reception perception test. He passes the analytical model side of things. All we need is day 2 draft capital, and it is wheels all the way up for Tory Horton. And I want to say in the Dane Brugler mock, he actually had Tory Horton going round 3 to the Chargers, and if that happens, I will be all the way in. And then our last player, I think our 10th, my guy, my 10th favorite pick in your rookie draft is Rocket Raheim Sanders. He's going at ADP of 46, so that's like the 410 as the RB21. He's my 404 as my RB16. And for him, it's just going to come down to if he gets drafted and where. But he's a profile I want to bet on. He was, like Ollie Gordon, a Devi darling, and for good reason. He had 1,700 yards from scrimmage and 12 touchdowns as a true sophomore on Arkansas next to a guy like, of course he didn't work out in the NFL, but Treylon Burks, where there is talent on this team, there's production happening on this team, and he still carved out a really huge role in this Arkansas team. And on top of that, he has this rare blend of size, speed, and pass catching that I want to bet on every single time. This is from Jacob Gibbs again. He had 771 career receiving yards, 41 avoided tackles on receptions, good for a 54% avoided tackle rate on his receptions. That is the highest rate of any running back drafted since 2017, with a minimum 50 receptions, passing a guy like Ashton Genty. I think it's tied with Ashton Genty, but that is insane. To make someone miss on over 50% of your avoided or of your receptions is nuts. And he's doing that not at like Tuten size or as a smaller back. He's doing that at 6 foot, 217 pounds. And on top of that, he ran a 4.46 and he recorded top speeds of 23.55 miles per hour and 23.48. Those were the 2 fastest speeds tracked by Next Gen Stats at the combine. So he is big, he's fast, he has rare missed tackles force ability, and he catches passes. So if he can just get a decent landing spot and get decent draft capital, I am all the way in as a late round dart throw. Now, that is going to do it for us today. Those are my favorite picks in your Dynasty rookie drafts coming up. And again, if you want to make sure you are ready to go for when those happen and when those kick off, subscribe to the Patreon, check it out, use promo code ROM, but click the link in the description, click the link in the comment section down below. Patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find my rookie rankings there, my dynasty rankings, my prospect models. Everything I'm working on and have behind the scenes is on the Patreon. Subscriber leagues, premium side of the Discord, one-on-one advice, all of that. Patreon.com/Ron Stewart. And I will have a fresh set of rookie rankings, a fresh set of RS grades once we get draft capital, all out to you guys on the Patreon by Saturday afternoon. So I'm excited for all of that. I wanted to just kind of, these are my, I've been doing running back rankings, I've been doing wide receiver rankings, but I haven't really given you, here are the guys that I like in your rookie draft. So there it is. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like